Welcome back to the Value Weaver podcast. Here your hosts Jyothi Hartley and Ravi Pachuri discuss procurement and supply chain related challenges and issues that we understand procurement leaders are facing. We talk about strategies, operations, procurement tech and best practices with real life case studies helping procurement leaders make more of an impact. This week we are really excited to have our first guest on this podcast so our listeners can hear a different voice for a change. I have known Richard for over 10 years, having bumped into him on the Procurement conference circuit. We've been great friends ever since. Richard is an internationally renowned procurement consultant and business advisor with over 30 years of experience across multiple industry sectors. His background is quite varied, having started his career in the armed forces, eventually moving into roles with McKinsey Consulting and as CPO for Co-op Bank, amongst others. He has kindly agreed to join us on this episode to talk about category management as a key component to successful strategic procurement. To help us understand this better and hopefully in plain and simple terms, let's hear from Richard himself. We welcome Richard's loyal LinkedIn connections, followers and avid listeners to anything he chooses to put his voice to. Over to you, Richard Beaumont.
Well, Jyothi, thank you. And Ravi, thank you as well. Look, a pleasure to join you on this podcast and to have the chance to talk about my chosen subject in Mastermind terms of category management and procurement. So look, delighted.
Richard, thank you very much for joining into this podcast. Can you please explain to our audience what is category management in procurement context?
Ravi, I could give you if you like, the textbook answer. And, depending on which particular search engine you go and use, you'll end up with something about, strategy, some kind of strategic approach, something that groups similar categories, similar products or services together. And it's a way of managing it. And it's that kind of language. I mean, look, we all know once upon a time it was a retail term. And it was a retail term to say cradle to grave. How did you buy something that you were going to put on the shelves? How did you manage the performance on the shelves? How did you, recognize the sort of financial performance at the end?
Yes.
The thing is, I don't like that. To me, describing category management in terms of what it is, grouping things together, product or services, and then managing it strategically actually says nothing at all about what it is.
Yes.
Category management exists for one purpose. It is to ensure that the product or service that you are spending money on is contributing the maximum value in the broadest sense to your organization. That's the purpose of category management, to drive value.
So Richard, that's great, but why would a company bother with this really, especially when I think we've all had experiences of when the key supplier relationships and buying decisions are not actually with procurement, they're out in the functions. So how do they align with broader business goals?
Well, this kind of brings us back to the sort of some of the oldest discussions, which are utterly pointless about, procurement. Should it be centralized, decentralized? Should it be regional, local? Should we have a seat at the table, presumably the board table, so that, we can take control of what's going on? And do you know what? That's no better than describing it as a strategic approach to managing similar products or services. Procurement, if we are going to be effective, is about how do we enable the stakeholders who are actually the users of the products or services that are being bought to get what they need. And what they need is defined by whatever the company's objectives are in terms of value. And value just isn't cost reduction. It could be contribution to environmental targets, people targets. It could be to drive innovation. It could be to manage risk. Every stakeholder in an organization, every functional head has those objectives. They come down from the board, they have to achieve them, they've got to hit a P&L, but they're also going to have to hit those other business value targets. We don't own those categories. It's not ours to possess. It's not about us as procurement being in control, because the ownership of a product or service always belongs to the person who is the consumer of it. He or she who has the P&L that's buying the product or service, they are our customer. And that customer mindset for procurement means, how do I have relationships with the appropriate mix of stakeholders across the organization? How do I have relationships with the suppliers of the product or service I'm buying? How do I bring those together in a strategic, structured process that delivers value? And I think, the point at which we as a function focus upon organization or who we report to, or do we have control or power, is the moment actually we've kind of lost our license to operate, because we've lost sight of what our purpose is. We're facilitators. We're very clever facilitators, but that's what we are. We're facilitators of value.
That's good. So, as we identify that, there are so many categories to manage, how do
Yeah.
we prioritize those categories, let's say, within an organization?
Well, traditionally, it probably would have been done by spend.
Okay.
That which we spend the most money on is the thing. Actually, that's not the way to do it. I mean, there are two really wonderful tools. The most relevant is a good old Kraljic matrix, Peter Kraljic. What's the purpose of a Kraljic matrix? It's to look at the importance of the category to the success of the business, and a broad assessment of the market you're buying it from. And look, anybody in procurement, I hope, would be familiar with it. 4 boxes, top right, strategic category, super important to the success of the business, and it's a complex market. So we're talking like ERP, buying ERP systems, or critical components of a product, or APIs if you're in pharmaceutical, pharmaceutical ingredients going into a drug. Top right. Difficult to get, super important. And I often think it's useful to do the negative, which is, when you're thinking about how important your category is to the business, everybody's instinct is to say, mine's important. Actually, do the opposite. Ask yourself, if something went wrong with my category, I couldn't get it, or the quality was bad, or it just wasn't suitable, how quickly would my business fail? And do you know what? The speed with which it will fail is the best indicator of how important it is to the success of your business. So in that instance, you might think, well, my ERP system is important, but is it really that important? Do you know what? If multinational company, if the ERP system failed, you've probably got about 48 hours. And after 48 hours, everything, all of your production, your planning, your logistics, your finance, your people management, they've all gone wrong. Your organization is probably dead in the water. So Kraljic, strategic. Bottom left, supermarket shopping, photocopier paper. Not important to the success of the business. Super simple market. You can go and buy it anywhere, standard specification. The other diagonal is always the more interesting. Top left, super important but simple market. IT stuff, laptops is a really good example, is a great place to be, because you need them. If they go wrong, it's going to hurt, but you've got a really easy market to go and get it from. And then the bottom right, which is super annoying, bottleneck, difficult market, not that important. And this, I always use the example of, this is a spare part for a vintage car. Right, you don't really need the vintage car because you've got a proper car, modern car to drive around in. But to get the spare part for your vintage car, holy Mosey, God, that can be hard work to go and get. Now, if you've got those 4 boxes, the instinct says I should aim for strategic. And, because by definition, those categories are the most important to the success of my business. Now, where it gets complicated, but actually I don't think it's complicated, I think it's simple, is that we've got to think more broadly than money. And the instinct is, well, this isn't important to my business because it's a big contribution to sales or to profitability or to revenue. But actually, top companies now are bringing in targets for environmental improvement, compliance with human rights legislation, innovation. And therefore, that question about success, importance of the category's success, to success of the business, is actually about what is the extent that this category can contribute to the widest set of my company's goals. And I think if you follow that and have that, use the Kralik as the foundation, but just make sure you're thinking across all of the value dimensions, that's a really good way to start to think about where you should prioritize category management. But it's only half the equation, because like any relationship, you have to think about it from the other side, which is, how do your suppliers of that category feel about you? And we've got another 2x2 matrix. Everything in life can be solved by a 2x2 matrix. But supplier preferencing asks, if I was my supplier and I looked at my company, how does my supplier feel? How valuable is the account? So how much of their total revenue are they making from me? And am I an attractive customer? And attractive isn't money. Attractive is brand, opportunity, exposure to new markets, moving into a new sector, research and development. There's lots of reasons why, someone. So for example, if you look at Oracle, they probably don't get that much money from the All England Lawn Tennis Club, but trust me, All England Lawn Tennis Club is a core customer to Oracle because of that branding and value and exposure from Wimbledon. So again, 4 boxes. Top right, you're a core customer. The supplier really likes you and you're super valued to them. Bottom left, you're just another customer. It doesn't mean a bad, just another customer, not that much value. Top left, exploit, bit tricky. They make lots of money, but there's nothing special about you. So they're probably being a bit idle in the way they service you, but they're happy with what they get. And bottom right, which is development, means, look, they really like you, but they're not getting as much money as they want. SIPS 101, you get asked a question, which is, you manage a strategic category, your supplier regards you as a nuisance. Describe the relationship and the steps you would do to improve it. And anybody doing that exam for 3 points will struggle to remember which box is which, so we just write down a vanilla answer of right, I'd have a communication plan, I'd have regular meetings, and I'd put KPIs in place. Correct, but actually missing the point, because the way to think about it is, if you thought about a relationship, a strategic category, your ERP system with your supplier as SAP, hate to give you the bad news, but SAP will regard your company as a nuisance. Not because they're going to give you bad service, but because you're a tiny part of their global revenue and there's nothing special about you. And the way that I think about that is, you're married. ERP, married, strategic category. You want to talk plans, future, development. You want to meet regularly, really deep relationship. Nuisance, they regard you as dating. They just want to meet you, have a good dinner date and leave you to it. And the dinner date for SAP is every 3 years they'll meet you for a license renewal, and they'll be really nice to you and you'll have a lovely time. And then as soon as the contract's signed, they don't want to talk to you again. Now, for procurement, why is that relevant? Because the way that you manage a strategic category where your supplier regards you as a nuisance, married and dating, is completely different to the way that you would manage a strategic category with a supplier that regarded you as a core customer, also married. Because for married, and typically we're talking about R&D, you're working with a small supplier, you're a critical part of their revenue, what they're developing is a critical part of your future. What are you doing? You're meeting probably weekly, daily. You've got joint plans, engagement. Now, for procurement, the way that you manage that relationship and that category with your suppliers and your stakeholders is completely different to the way that you would manage another strategic category with SAP, who regard you as a nuisance. With one, you're going to be in weekly conversations. In the other, you're going to be just enabling a great dinner date every 3 years when you renew your licenses. And that, understanding that, to me, is the core skill that procurement professionals, category managers, need to develop. How am I managing, not by spend, not by position on Kralich, but what's the right way to manage it based on the combination of Kralich and supplier preferencing, the relationship?
Richard, on that, so that this is all great, and so we've got the theory, I suppose, and we all love a four box, don't we? But in terms of for procurement category managers, who are developing a category plan and a strategy, and they're looking to implement it across the organisation, can you maybe just give us a high level of what those steps need to be successful?
Well, look, quite shamelessly, I mean, I do training globally for Searcho. They develop, AI-driven category management technology. Their process, I think, sums it up well. And this isn't about a 4-step, 5-step, 7-step, or whichever consultant's mix you've got. Essentially, there are 4 steps. You do analysis, so you understand the market, your stakeholder requirements, risks, cost drivers, your own strengths and weaknesses, the market competitiveness through a Porter's 5 forces. And out of that, you then develop a strategy. And to be honest, trying to do that today without the support from technology is almost impossible. I mean, for photocopier paper, yes, of course we can do it. But really, if you are going to go and source a complex part, a technology component globally, taking into account all the legislation changes, market competitiveness, that's beyond our ability to do that. It's certainly not filling out a PowerPoint template. So technology, and there are other flavors, but technology that can help you complete that analysis and support you in developing a strategy. So how, on the basis of that analysis, do I deliver the value that the organization wants? That's step 2. Step 3, do it. Turn it into a plan. One of the weaknesses in, category management from a procurement point of view is that, historically, we're not bad at doing the analysis and coming up with the objectives, the strategy we're going to do, but we're really bad at being able to evidence the fact that we were actually doing it. And of course, the big part, step 4, is track the results. So to me, the real skill is how do you bring together all of the information, all of the data that's available to you so that you can analyze the best way, the best options for delivering the value that the business seeks. I mean, that to me is the 4 parts of the process: analysis, strategy, initiatives, results. Think, okay. Have an objective, turn it into a plan, prove you've done it.
Great.
Right.
Thank you.
That's really, insightful and gives us the overview of how the category will be identified and what strategies we are going to put in place to manage it. So, Richard, you are expert in your, with the procurement, and you love procurement. We understand that. But how, and you are on top of everything. So how do you update yourself, with the industry trends, best practices for in category management?
That's a really good question. I'm a huge fan of conferences, right? Mm-hmm. And I chair conferences for WBR, Worldwide Business Research, ProcureCon. I chair conferences for Luxartia, and I chair, company conferences. I facilitate those as well. Do you know what? As Jothy said, we first met or sat at the back of the room participating in conferences, and now, 10, 15 years later, I'm chairing them. I treat conferences as my learning and development. That's my continuous learning. So by going to those, that investment, top tip for anybody, if you go and speak or participate in a conference, the chances are you won't pay for your ticket, right? Because you're contributing, you're sharing whatever it is that you've done. So by going to a conference, you've got the opportunity to present, to listen, to discuss, to have all those conversations with, procurement colleagues who, I can tell you now, they're all in the same boat. They're experiencing the same problems. They've solved stuff that you haven't solved. You have solved stuff that they haven't solved. So I would just encourage that true professional networking at a conference. And look, you have to be realistic. Of course, some of the content is going to be something you've heard before, or you've already done, or it's not relevant because it's just in a different industry. But I'm an absolute believer, and I've yet to be proved wrong. There is always a golden ticket that comes out of a conference in terms of an idea, a connection, a thought, an approach that you can take home and do something with.
Right. That's really good. That's really nice. So, that's kind of, that's where you come to know about the latest what is happening in different companies, and they kind of cross-pollinate the ideas, right? So that's really good.
But you know what? I do another thing. LinkedIn. I mean, that's the the social media channel that I tend to use. LinkedIn is awesome. I mean, not only has it got great learning, content in the background, but if you're following, leaders both from suppliers, from organisations, from different companies, you can build up a huge amount of knowledge just by observing and participating on LinkedIn as well. So I would say go to conferences, look at LinkedIn, and then, it is not idle to sit in front of a computer and use AI, ChatGPT, find me the top 5 stories related to procurement or supply chain act or whatever you're worried about, see what comes up, and then just spend 10 minutes clicking and
That's
go
right.
and read and find out. And that's just time well spent for me.
That's really great. Yeah, that's good to know that these tools exist around us so that we can grab latest information and news
Yeah.
in the industry. So coming to, because now we understand that we are on top of everything. What are the current challenges and obstacles commonly encountered by the category managers? Let's say given the context of today's world, and
No,
how do you address them?
no, great. I'll give you a really short answer. One word:
Sure.
complexity.
Okay.
Complexity. The world now is so complex. Legislation across every spectrum, conflict, supply chain problems, political issues, changing values in organisations. All of it. It's not uncommon for a category manager to find themselves subject to 10, 15 different pieces of legislation.
Okay.
Complexity is the biggest challenge, and that's where you need technology to help siphon, filter, and analyze that information to give you insights to get past that complexity. And that's where I'd invest my time.
So,
Yeah.
Richard, okay, so given that context then, so if you could jump into a rocket of, I don't know, time travel and fast forward to the future, come with us on our journey, what would you wish for in the world of category management?
I mean this as a joke, cyborgs. But I don't actually mean Terminator cyborgs. What I mean is, I would like us to truly focus on a partnership between procurement professionals and technology. And by technology, I mean AI. Because if we're going to do our job well in the future, we're going to need AI to be doing the data gathering, data analysis, recommendation engine, and implementing stuff as well, drafting commercial processes, sorting out responses, making recommendations, turning it into a contract and manage. Technology should be doing all of that, right? Not least because some of us aren't very good at doing all of that. People do people. We do creativity, we do relationships, we do understanding nuances of complexity or balances between value. We do the conversations that I was talking about with stakeholders and suppliers. I believe for us to be effective in the future, we've got to bring those two things together and train and equip the procurement professionals of the future not to do RFPs, not to understand contracts, not to go and run negotiation, but to use technology to do the heavy lifting and focus instead on the social networking, communication, problem solving, and creativity that AI is not currently designed to do. So to me, if you could put me in a rocket ship, I want to see a future where we have the right delegation of role between AI and people executing that delivery of value in the most effective way. And it's a journey we're not on track with at the moment, I have to say.
Hopefully there's somebody out there that's listening to this that can make that happen.
Oh no, I think we can all make it
True.
happen. I think, fundamentally, the thing that's going to make it happen is stop creating junior buyer roles. Stop creating buyer roles. Start thinking about how you're training category managers, risk managers, relationship managers, and focus on getting the data and technology to do that buying, purchase operations center. That should be tech. So to technology providers and to companies, stop paying people to do jobs that technology should be doing. Invest in training and developing people to execute the jobs that people should do. So it's not just about someone out there, it's about all of us as procurement leaders asking the question, do I truly believe this is a job that should be done by somebody? Or is this a job that I should find a way to do this by tech? Or I need to look after it for now because the tech isn't quite there, but it won't be long before it is. How am I truly driving the capability of my people to do the stuff that they should be doing in the future? And that sits with all of us as procurement leaders. That would be my wish, Jyoti.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
That's great.
I know
Yeah.
we're short on time, Richard, so thank you for that. That's amazing. Amazing insights and great describing transformation as well there. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure.
So thank you very much, Richard, for taking time to talk to us and making this area of procurement sound cool, exciting, and necessary.
But it is exciting and cool. That's the point.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So if people want to know more about you, where people can find you?
LinkedIn, Richard Beaumont, one word. Just type in Richard Beaumont, you'll find me. I think there's someone out there who's either an actor or a hand artist, but you'll recognise me, Richard Beaumont, Procurement, and you'll find me there.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. We'll encourage our followers to do that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Lovely to chat. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.